Well, greetings again there, tuberistas. I'm going to resume my thoughts on Ukraine this morning, and while I could go on for a very long time about Western hypocrisies regarding its own criminal civilian targeting in Vietnam and Iraq, these points are too obvious. Let me instead raise an issue flying blissfully under every NATO radar system: the origins of Putin's dictatorship. There's no doubt that Putin has expanded his executive powers since 2000, when he took them over. His status is equivalent to Tsar Nicholas II, ruling a compliant Duma after 1905, with the state securocrats as the new nobility, along with insider oligarchs. It's the nationalist ideology of the Russian white generals, promoted by the Western powers inciting against the Bolsheviks in the Russian Civil War. And that is Great Russia, one and indivisible, which means all the historic Slav territory of the Russias is part of the same Russian nation and people, and has no right to separate itself from the Russian family under its rightful sovereign. This ideology was always the backbone of the anti-Soviet and anti-communist movement that exalted Yeltsin to power. Free market democracy was frosting and not, as the Western backers so wanted to believe, the cake itself. What has happened in post-Soviet space is thus largely a reflection of the nationalist and anti-communist agenda the West has always sought to impose to the East. The Tsar's illiberal, repressive regime could be tolerated, his war against Japan forgiven, as long as he was a convenient ally of the democracies against German militarism. And so the West sought and thought it had found a new ally of convenience in its hero of the 1990s, Boris Yeltsin. You might also recall, if you're old enough, how reformers in Russia and the West promoted General Augusto Pinochet's Chile as the ideal free market model, with a strong state combined with a neoliberal free market. This model was endorsed not just by Russian privatizers, the oligarchy mafia to be, but by Western economic advisors and diplomatic officers. It was called the 100 Days Plan to completely undo the holdover Soviet economy, outdoing Stalin, who could only come up with the 5-year plan of 4, because, as American ambassador to the USSR Michael McFaul said, the Soviet Union needed a wrecking ball, and Yeltsin was promoted as said necessary wrecking ball. The main obstacle in his way, the then freely elected State Duma of the Russian Federation. You can be sure this public body was routinely demonized by the Western media and pro-reform Russians as a nest of brown reaction, no matter that it was freely elected. What it really contained was representatives of those ordinary citizens who stood to be buried under McFaul's rubble. When they protested Yeltsin's illegal closure after a vote of no confidence on the 100 Days Plan, Yeltsin did what Donald Trump only dreamed of doing, sending in tanks to blow a shell hole in the building and send his legislators huddling in the basement in fear for their lives. The Russian parliament was the first piece of McFaul's rubble, with the rest of the country soon metaphorically following. One might draw a straight line between the blown-out Russian parliament buildings and the devastation of Mariupol you see on your iPhone while driving to the mall. That one incident created Russia's over-executive presidency, cheered on at the time by the West and its diplomatic and media mouthpieces. Democracy being, of course, only possible when our guys hold power, bullets or ballots, as long as they win. This executive power expanded under Yeltsin, managed and practiced by Putin and the Russian Federal Security Bureau, successor to the KGB. By the time Yeltsin was forced into retirement via alcohol abuse and pending corruption charges, he handed over a virtual autocracy intact to his hand-picked but inevitable heir, Vladimir Putin, protector of ill-gotten oligarchical gains. Interesting also that under both Yeltsin and Putin, defiant Chechen rebels were bombed and shelled by tactics we're seeing now. Mariupol is a successor to Grozny, as Putin to Yeltsin, but back then Putin was a hero, defending his country from Islamic terror, a fellow bunker buster doing whatever it took, like the USA in Afghanistan. Elliot Cohen, a contributing editor of the Atlantic magazine, stated outright in a recent article the standard neoconservative view that Ukraine is indeed a proxy war against Russia with the objective of regime change in Moscow, and the more Russian soldiers killed, the quicker, the better. In other words, World War III can be won by fighting to the last Ukrainian and on the cheap for the U.S., as long as there are no Americans coming home in body bags. It's all win-win. This hardline perspective parallels the militant nationalists of Ukraine, who have shut down all local political and media pluralism. There's no doubt this policy objective is strongly held in Washington and is a powerful influence in media boardrooms as reporters frame their hawkish questions at White House press briefings. But of course it's too bluntly honest for public consumption, hence the avoidance of actual reportage in the Western media, but much moral editorializing and human interest pieces on the desperate plight of Ukraine's refugees or those folks still caught in the line of fire. As in World War I, when the German destruction of Louvain, the targeting of civilians for sheltering snipers, and the hysterical skewering of babies on helmet spikes took emotional precedence over all other considerations, those, of course, are to be addressed behind closed doors, only after the victory of the righteous and the good. But, again, that's context. Whataboutism? The kind of independent thinking that cheering robots like you have no place repeating. Oh, it seems I hear that inevitable knock upon the oral communication device. Hello? Gotta speak up. This ain't no 5G I'm holding here. Do who? Emmanuel Goldstein? Hey, does your family know you've slipped out? Your big brother's going to call the cops. Huh? You just want to let our viewers know that thought crime is still alive and well? That's reassuring, but between you and me and the artillery shells and sanctions, it's being driven back into the basement. What? Winston? No, that's not my name. Are you sure you hand out the right telestream? The connection's gone. Wonder why.